Hi everyone, it's Stephanie, and you are tuned in to the review of Married at First Sight Season 6, Episode 7. So, before I get started, am I the only one who missed the memo about it not coming on last week? I got ready and sat still, and I was waiting for the show to come on, and it just I completely missed the whole memo that it wasn't coming on. But no worries, because it came on this week and it was a great episode. There was a lot of things going on this week, so I kind of just want to jump right in. Let's just kick it off with Shawniece and Jeff D. I mean, I could have screamed. I was elated at this episode because they finally, I don't even want to say they turned a corner. They finally moved beyond where they were. If you guys have been watching, they have been stuck in the same place forever, and everybody struggled to watch that, myself included. I'm hopeful, so I've always held this little idea that they were gonna do something better, or could have been greater, or there was potential, and they really showed us this week that, you know, for those of us who are still holding on, because I know I read many of the comments, we had many conversations, a lot of people were like not believing that Jeff D could be any different, but we saw that he was. I mean, if we can do the 180 award, this couple would get it. It was like, I was screaming. I was so excited to see it because they really gave a good reflection of how powerful conversation is. So clearly, if you've been watching, Jeff D doesn't communicate well, really at all, up until this point. And she had, you know, another moment where she felt like she couldn't really function in a healthy way in this relationship. And so he surprises her with a card and a rose, and basically explains why he's been acting that way. Now, whether we agree with it or not, we have to give him points for finally getting to a point where he explains it to her. You know, we can't beat him up this whole time for not doing something, and then when he does it, we're still like, well, he should have always done that. Because I know a lot of people are watching that and saying it. If you translate it to real life relationships, how fruitful would our relationships be if we continue to beat up our spouses or our significant others about things that they're not doing, and then when they do them, we're like, well, you should have already done it. So that's the approach that I'm going to take with Jeff D. I'm so excited to see him make that change, and that's a testament of really talking about things and putting things out there. Even if it's hurtful, if you really communicate with your spouse about what's going on, chances are they'll be able to see it from a different space and have more patience for you. And it was really good to see them transition to a space where they were so comfortable and fun. Before, obviously they had sex. If you watch the episode, you know they were intimate. But before they even kind of full out said it, I knew, I could tell, because we can all tell, I knew they went from playing like hide the pickle to I found the pickle, because their energy with each other was so much more intimate. And you know, he was touching her and joking around with her, and he really like got over himself. And I totally get his perspective of why he did it. He wanted her to be different, but he didn't communicate it effectively. But I'm hoping that through this process, and I think Pastor Cal really had something to do with that, because if we remember a couple of weeks before at the honeymoon, Pastor Cal was saying, well, you don't want to kind of get her to a point where she shuts down, etc. And you know, at first Jeff D was kind of like, I don't understand that, but he was willing to listen. So also seeking the right counsel. Not everybody is the right counsel. So not every friend, not every family member is going to be the right counsel, even though most of the time their heart is in the right place. So seeking the right counsel, and also being open to making those changes if you value your relationship and you want it to move forward. So I was so happy to see that. I mean, literally, I couldn't have had a better moment in this episode, and I can't wait to see how things matriculate for them, because it's like watching a different couple, and I'm like, man, it's so easy looking at them, and they seem at ease with each other. So this is a real good point to start back after the hiatus, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. So with moving on with, let's see, Ryan and Jaclyn, I really appreciated the conversation that the two of them had with Pastor Cal. So we're kind of back, or I don't think we really ever left the discussion of the trauma and so on and so forth. And a lot of people have been back and forth as well, because I've read in the comments about it being maybe too soon, or Ryan needing to give her more space. And I agree with that in a way. You know, if you're going to support somebody in a certain space, then you have to support them. What I loved about what Pastor Cal did was kind of, although agreeing that Ryan does need to give her that space and support her, he also made it so that Jaclyn had to be accountable for her own participation. So yes, you've gone to this terrible thing, and we know it's going to take time, and really you never just dismiss the idea of somebody that you lost in your mind, but are you comparing this person to your current husband? Are you in a space where you're really invested in this relationship and are willing to move forward? And she paused, but she said, no, I'm not comparing him, and I do want to move forward. And whether that's true or not, whether we believe it or not, the fact that there is some accountability for her in making these choices and taking baby steps is really important, because, you know, he can, you know, Ryan, he can only meet her where she is. And as long as she's continuing to invest in that relationship, then that wound will eventually heal in a way where it doesn't get in the way of their relationship. And I don't really think it's getting in the way. But it was really important to see that dialogue happen so that they're in a more comfortable place. And moving forward together without kind of the elephant in the room where one person, you know, doesn't trust that, you know, they have moved on from an ex and the other person is kind of feeling shafted. Like, there isn't any of that going on anymore. And they're kind of at ease with each other. They've always really been at ease. And you see that when they're hanging out with friends and family. Every couple this episode hangs out with friends and family. They have their first night that they host at their homes, and you get to see them hang out with friends and family and do that whole thing, which traditionally you would have already done many times before you married someone. So they're working backwards and trying to kind of get it all in at the same time. What I failed to mention probably like a week ago, but I want to kind of bring it up, or maybe the week before, is just the baggage, because there is something that Ryan said in regard to not having any baggage and kind of putting it all on her. So, okay, if you're anybody who says, I don't have baggage, that's your baggage. Like, and I forgot to mention that, but that was jarring at the time, because what's happening is we're comparing bags. Well, your bag has more stuff than my bag. Okay, well, we're still carrying bags, and trust that everybody has baggage and it looks differently. So for people who are saying, you know, well, her baggage is heavier than his, it doesn't matter. And he does have baggage. The idea that he doesn't is a problem in itself. And we really just need to be aware of that. And her baggage may be the trauma, but everybody has their baggage, and it's important enough. It's really important that people help each other carry it, because it's not just this trauma. We all have different types of things, and you're carrying it along, and we have to have patience for everything. If there was, you know, some other horrific instance in somebody else's life, you wouldn't say, well, they need to get over it. You would be more supportive of okay, we're going to work through that, or I'm going to have patience with them as they work through that, as we continue to build this relationship. So that's really important to note, that let's not get caught up in what type of baggage it is. A bag is a bag is a bag is a bag. When we talk about baggage in relationships, yes, there's some more detrimental, but there isn't any where you feel that you are void of baggage, okay? So I just wanted to kind of point that out. The last couple is Molly and Jonathon. So there was a lot going on with Molly and Jonathon. I'll just kind of jump out there and say they present on the surface. Everything is like, oh, we work really well together and we get along really well and we're a perfect match. Everything is so tiptoey that it's like, you know, I don't know. This episode, I kind of had a breaking point where I was just like not buying it. I wasn't really into it. And I'm like, okay, what's really going on with them? And you really get to see the frustrations that happen. Based on what we see this episode, John is kind of frustrated with the lack of intimacy, her almost regressing instead of like progressing slowly, which at this point I think he would really appreciate. She's regressed. And Molly feeling comfortable in that regression, and kind of comparing it to other parts of her of old relationships where she said, hey, I've never felt this way before with anybody that I've been with. And if I were to meet with her, I would say, listen, cut yourself some slack, because you've also never married somebody at first sight. It's not supposed to go a certain way. And I think that's where she's struggling. Because throughout the episode, she says a lot, I expect it to be a certain way. Family expects this, people expect this. So she's projecting a lot of these really personal struggles about what she expects to everybody else. Well, everybody expects this. True, everybody who comes to your wedding, yeah, they expect it to work out. They hope it works out with good feeling. But the expectations of the relationship should only come from you and the person that you're in a relationship with. So I feel like if I could paint a visual, she's like kind of standing in a hole and she's just digging, she's throwing sand over, and she's like burying herself under the expectations of what is perceived to be other people by her. But I really feel like she feels inadequate because she thinks that based on a certain time frame that they've known each other, there should be more happening, and she doesn't know why. And she's just not comfortable yet. I would like to point out that though we've been watching this for maybe like a month or two at this point, when we have like that little ding, 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 back to reality, it's really day 14 or 15, I think. They flash back to the honeymoon scene to, transition it to something that's current, and you see 1 week ago. So if we think about it, 16 days, it's first of all, it's a lot just getting married. And yes, they signed up for this, but just think about it for 1 second. They meet at the altar, they don't know each other, they get married, they go on a honeymoon. They're dealing with all of these things where really on a first date, traditionally you could say, oh, he laughs too loud, bye. Or you know what, this person, I don't really like their desire in life. So I'm not, you have options. And even though, yes, they have options right now, they're all focused on being in it and staying in it and learning to sustain it. So it's day 16. She's not comfortable with, being intimate. That's not a problem. Like I know a lot of people are going to say it's a Molly problem. Like when you watch that episode, it looks like it's a Molly problem, but I think they both have fault. So Molly needs to, she's a very poor communicator. I mean, hashtag the new Jeff D. Like, she doesn't communicate at all. And she's just kind of dancing around and hoping that somebody gets it. And he doesn't really communicate at all. As well, I won't say he doesn't communicate at all, but he's kind of tiptoeing around her to make her more comfortable. Because if you remember, flashback to the honeymoon episode, she said that he acted like a child and a little boy. So he's kind of been eggshelling around her and giving her room. But he seems to be making more of an effort and really trying, and it doesn't seem like she's really trying at all. So she really needs to learn to communicate better, because being stuck in these feelings, listen, I can justify anything that goes in between my ears. Whatever goes on in between my ears, I can justify. It doesn't even have to make sense. I'm really good at this too, guys. I can justify anything, and you can too. If that's what we want, we will make it make sense. So it's important that she just talks about it and lets him know so that he can have some level of understanding as she continues to get comfortable. If I was sitting there with her, I would ask her what she's so uncomfortable with, what she thinks that means, get a piece of her history, because I'm sure a lot of the things historically ties into something going on right now. And I'd like to kind of hear that before I pass judgment on where she is and why she's, moving at the pace that she's moving, and she's uncomfortable with it. So it isn't just the judgment of others. So I do feel bad for John in that way, because it almost feels like he's this puppy dog who just can't come inside the house. On the other side, John, rightfully frustrated, is kind of not even giving her room to get into a place that would make her more comfortable. So when he's one-on-one with one of the experts, he is, visibly frustrated and kind of saying, what is the point of doing XYZ if I don't get anything in return. I'm giving my all and not getting anything. And yes, that's frustrating, and I totally get it. But a long-lasting, sustaining relationship does not count what you've done and what that person deserves based on what you've done or not done. Because if we changed our behavior based on our spouse's response to what we expect, nobody would be together. You know, you walk in and you have dinner. Well, maybe your spouse walks in and they had a terrible day, so they go straight to the shower. If my expectation was that he came in and he was wowed over this dinner and he didn't, you know, like, you're always, every day, you're going to be let down, because it's just people kind of move and they have stuff going on. And even within a relationship, you're still individuals who have different things going on. So the idea that he doesn't need to continue to put effort is kind of selfish and a little immature. And I know that he doesn't know that. I know he's not trying to do that. I don't think in saying that he's trying to be malicious, but it's a really good point to recognize that you can't say that. You can't say, it's almost like a child. Think about how much we love our children, or, you know, a niece or nephew. If we based our love and what we did for children on their return of it, like, listen, there would be a lot of kids out here not looking so great. Because just from what I've heard, and I'm not a parent yet, but from what I've heard, it's often a job that you give a lot and you don't get as much, and you sign up for it because you're built, you know, you're growing a life. So in growing and nurturing a relationship, understand that sometimes you're going to put in more than you get out. But with the energy of continuing to give and to nurture that relationship, you get something beautiful at a time that is unexpected. So if I had to sit with him, I would tell him to continue to make himself wanted. Okay, by that I mean, don't just shut it off and then have an attitude, because guess what, I'm already struggling to be, you know, affectionate and intimate with you. So if you have an attitude, that really shuts me down. Like, women are usually used to being chased. So the idea that we have to chase a little bit, at first it's kind of like, I'm not chasing, I'm not used to that. But if you spend enough time with someone and you start to get to know them and you really care for them and you're attracted to them, which she is, over time, she will build the desire to be intimate. What she is saying is that she feels forced, whether it's by, you know, family, by friends, by society, by the fact that that's her husband. And, you know, I mean, I guess I didn't have to do the quotes because it is legally her husband, but just by the term her husband. But she's really 2 weeks in, you know, like, at this point, she may have only gotten paid once. Like, the full pay period hasn't even hit and it's time for sex. So what needs to happen is that he gives her room to be comfortable, to desire him in a way that makes her comfortable, not stressing her out or demanding of it. Because even in a traditional relationship, the energy of demanding that is such a turnoff, whether it's justified or not. You know, I want sex now. Oh yeah, that's great. You know, like, that's so romantic. More or less somebody who you don't know, who's really trying to figure you out as a person. So what I would say to that, to John, is that just take a chill pill and really just be the nice guy that I believe that he is, and things will work out. It will. Like, the faucet will turn on. I mean, ask Jephte and Shawniece, you know, it will happen. What I would have hoped to see between the two of them is when the expert was sitting there, she kind of talked about, you know, them needing to communicate, but I'm like, hey, you open the door, I'm going to walk through it. This is what I'm here for, and I'm here to support you two. Why not mediate a conversation that happens right then? I would say, hey, John, let's talk about how you're feeling. Okay, did you hear that? What are you hearing from that, Molly? And then flip it. Molly, how are you feeling? What did you hear from that, John? You know, and how are we going to move forward in this? And it's not enough that you just kind of listen to people. I am big on directives. So let's fix this. What does this look like? And I would tell them kind of what I just said about, Molly, you need to learn to communicate more and you need to do X, Y, Z. Jonathan, you need to kind of fix your attitude about it. I get it. He's justified, but that attitude is not going to take him far long term. So we have to kind of like give up on ourselves in a way. And by that, I mean, in a relationship, it's not always about you. So sometimes I have to take a loss or take an L from me for the greater scheme of our relationship. So, you know, I may not get what I want right now, but because I love this person, I'm going to continue to be myself. I'm going to continue to genuinely please and genuinely do something, and something might come out of nowhere in just me being instead of doing and expecting. And that's kind of the message that I would convey to him, just so it could shift his perspective. It doesn't mean that he doesn't want what he wants, and the desire for that and all that stuff is natural. It's just, how can we fix this? What's the solution for this? And how can we go the next week feeling better, rather than just saying, you guys need to communicate better, and you kind of halfway start the conversation but don't finish it. Clearly, they don't have really good tools. Otherwise, they would already be doing that. So that is my synopsis. But I think they're moving along as they should be. I mean, there should be no expectations. And, you know, this is a lot. So for us to kind of even think that things would be perfect all the time is not even realistic. So we're getting into the nitty gritty. We're getting into the things that really can make or break, and we're seeing them, you know, deal with that or overcome it. So I'm excited to see what happens in the next few weeks. As always, I will be here next week to do the review. If you liked it, please subscribe and comment. I respond to almost all of them, and I love everybody's feedback. And I will also do another video regarding relationships and some of the questions that I had when I did the 5 love language video on Valentine's Day. So I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon.